A woman stands alone as an entire town turns its back, casting her into a deadly blizzard. Christina Miller, a new widow, is banished, blamed for the debts of a husband she barely knew. Freezing, desperate, she stumbles into a remote cabin seeking shelter. But she's not alone. The cabin belongs to Thomas Holt, the most feared outlaw in the territory. She's trapped between the blizzard outside and the monster inside. Never guessing that this supposed monster is the only one who can save her, and that he will pay the ultimate price for it. The wind in Probity Springs, Wyoming, had a personal spite about it. It clawed at Christina Miller, ripping the hat from her head. No one among the 50 people on the town hall steps moved to retrieve it. "The ledgers are clear," Bartholomew Bart Higgins announced, his voice smooth and deep. He was a handsome man with a thick silver mustache and a custom-tailored wool coat. Thomas Miller's debts to this bank, and indeed to this town, total nearly $4,000. His assets cover perhaps a third of that. Christina stood numb, her black mourning dress stiffening with frost. Her husband of 2 years had been dead for 4 days, a suicide in his own failed store. He had left her to face the consequences. "It is a tragedy," Higgins continued, his cold winter sky eyes on her. "But Probity Springs cannot absorb this loss. The town council has voted. Mrs. Miller, as you have no collateral and no means to repay, you are unwelcome. Banishment." The word hung in the freezing air. "Mr. Higgins, please." Christina's voice was a dry rasp. "The blizzard, it's already starting." "You can't. Where am I to go?" "That, madam, is no longer the concern of this council," Higgins said. He nodded to Sheriff Collier. "See that she is escorted to the town line. Her personal effects will be held against the debt." She was being cast out with nothing. "You can't do this!" she screamed, panic breaking through her numbness. "He did this, not me. You all know me. Mildred, Mrs. Gable, please." She looked at Mildred, a woman who had shared coffee with her last week. Mildred dropped her gaze. Mrs. Gable, the pastor's wife, sniffed it. "It's God's judgment, Christina. A man who takes his own life." The injustice was profound. She had been a good wife to a weak man, a man who secretly gambled while smiling at these very people in church. "Mr. Higgins, you encouraged his investments," she tried. A last, desperate attempt. "You told him the railroad speculation was a sure thing." Higgins's smile was a thin, cold line. "I am a banker, Mrs. Miller. I advise. Your husband made his own choices." He gestured to the sheriff. "Now." Sheriff Collier grabbed her arm. His grip was iron. Christina didn't struggle. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction. She held her head high as she was walked past the church, past the faces of her neighbors, to the edge of town. The snow was horizontal, stinging her face like needles. "Don't come back, Mom," Sheriff Collier advised, not unkindly. "Mr. Higgins is a powerful man. He holds the note on everything. Just don't come back." He released her and vanished into the wall of white. Christina was alone. She turned west toward the faint promise of trees and walked away from the town that had condemned her. She walked, fueled by a rage so cold it burned. She would not die. She would not give Bart Higgins the satisfaction. The rage faded as the hours passed, replaced by a terrifying cold that sank into her bones. The world was just white, quiet, and the agonizing, rhythmic crunch of her boots in the deepening drifts. Darkness was falling, an oppressive grey-blue shroud. She was done. She couldn't feel her feet. She leaned against a massive pine, ready to let go, and then, through the wind's shriek, she smelled it. Smoke. Wood smoke. Hope, a painful jolt, pierced her lethargy. She pushed off the tree, falling, crawling, and staggering toward the smell. She thrashed through waist-deep drifts until she saw it, a small, rough-hewn log cabin nestled in a cleft of rock. A thin ribbon of grey smoke curled from its stone chimney. Salvation. She clawed her way to the door, her hands too numb to knock. She pushed. It was barred. "Please!" she cried, her voice stolen by the wind. "Help me, please!" No answer. She saw a small frosted window. Beside it, a stack of firewood. She grabbed a log and, with her last strength, smashed the window. The sound of breaking glass was sharp, shocking. She reached inside, fumbled for the bar, and lifted it. The door swung open. A wave of glorious warmth hit her. She fell inside, onto a hard-packed dirt floor, and dragged the door shut against the white monster, plunging the cabin into near total darkness. She was alive. She lay there gasping, before a sound from the back of the room made her blood turn to ice. It was the metallic, unmistakable click of a rifle hammer being pulled back. "Don't move!" A low, rough voice growled from the darkness. "Not 1 inch!" The voice came from a corner of the small, one-room cabin, a deep baritone vibrating with menace. Christina froze on the threshold. The only light came from the dull orange glow of a pot-bellied stove. I'm sorry," she stammered, her teeth chattering. "The storm. I was banished from Probity Springs. I would have died." A long silence. The glowing stove cast just enough light to illuminate the man as he rose from a cot. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and moved with a lethal grace. He stepped into the light, and Christina's breath caught. He wore stained canvas trousers and a flannel shirt, but it was his face that held her. A long, jagged scar ran from his left temple across the bridge of his nose and disappeared into his thick, dark beard. His eyes were pits of shadow. The rifle he held, a Winchester, never wavered. "Banished," he repeated, his voice flat. "Probity Springs doesn't banish people. They hang them. My husband, he died. Debts. Mr. Higgins, he controls the council. They cast me out." The man's posture changed at the mention of the name. It was almost imperceptible, a tensing of the shoulders. "Higgins." The name sounded like a curse. He lowered the rifle slightly. "You broke my window." "I'll fix it," she whispered, still on the floor. "I have no money, but I can work." He stared at her, a mess of frozen tears and desperation. He let out a long breath. "Get up," he ordered, "and bar that door. You're letting the cold in." Christina scrambled to her feet and slammed the heavy wooden bar into place. The cabin was small, a cot, the stove, a rough table, and shelves laden with traps, tools, and tins. "Get close to the stove," he commanded. "You'll lose a foot if you don't." She obeyed, holding out her waxy white hands. The pain as the feeling returned was agonizing, a wave of pins and needles that made her cry out. He watched her, grim-faced. He turned, hung the rifle on a peg, and poured hot black coffee from a kettle into a tin mug. He shoved it into her hands. "Drink." It was scalding and bitter, and it was the best thing she had ever tasted. "I am Christina Miller," she said. "Thomas," he replied. "Thomas Holt." The name struck her like a physical blow. "Thomas Holt? The outlaw? The one who robbed the Cheyenne stage? The one, they say, killed a U.S. Marshal?" He leaned against the wall, crossing his arms. The scar on his face seemed to pulse. "That's what they say. Are you going to kill me?" He gave a short, harsh laugh. "Why? You're worth nothing. And I'm not in the habit of killing women, despite what the posters say. You're just a half-frozen nuisance." He gestured to the floor. "You can sleep there. There's a spare blanket on the shelf. In the morning, If this storm breaks, you're gone." "Gone where?" she asked, desperation returning. He'll have men posted. They'll shoot me if I go back, and I'll freeze if I go forward." "Not my problem," Thomas said. He turned his back, sat on his cot, and began to meticulously sharpen a long knife, the shing-shing-shing of steel on whetstone filling the cabin. Christina knew a closed door when she saw one. She found the blanket and sat on the floor near the stove. She was trapped in a tiny box with a notorious killer, while a blizzard that could kill her raged outside. She watched him. He was a man who lived on the edge, his movements economical and precise. But he had given her coffee. He had let her by the fire. For the first time, Christina analyzed her situation. The good people of Probity Springs, led by the civilized Bart Higgins, had cast her out to die. This monster, this scarred killer, had given her shelter. The world was upside down. "There's a pot of stew on the stove," he grumbled, not looking up. "You broke into my house. You can pay for your keep. Eat. Then sleep. I don't want to hear a sound from you." He offered her a bowl and a spoon. The stew was thick with gamey meat and potatoes. It was hot, salty, and filled her with a strength she thought she'd lost. She ate, scraped the bowl clean, and returned to her spot by the fire. She wrapped herself in the blanket and lay down on the hard, packed earth. Across the room, Thomas Holt sat on his cot, his rifle resting across his knees, his eyes open and watchful. She was in the cabin of an outlaw, and for the first time since her husband died, she felt strangely safe. The blizzard did not break in the morning. It did not break for 6 more days. The world was reduced to the 4 walls of the cabin, the howl of the wind, and the space between 2 people who should have been enemies. The silence was thick and heavy. Christina made herself useful. She organized Thomas's chaotic shelves, patched his torn shirts with her own small sewing kit, and took over the cooking, stretching his meager supplies. Thomas watched her. His watchfulness was unnerving, but it was impersonal. He observed her the way he observed the weather. He never spoke of his past, and never asked about hers. On the 3rd day, she woke to find him gone. Panic seized her. Had he left her? She ran to the door, but it was pushed open, revealing Thomas covered in ice, a fresh rabbit dangling from his hand. He had been out to check his traps, tied to the cabin by a rope lifeline. "Bar the door," he grunted. "You're wasting heat." He showed her how to skin the rabbit. Her stomach turned, but she did it. "You're not squeamish," he noted. It was the first thing he'd said to her that wasn't a command. "I can't afford to be," she replied. On the 5th day, the silence became too much. She was mending his gloves by the fire. He was carving a piece of wood. "The poster in Probity Springs," she said quietly. "It said you killed a U.S. Marshal." The knife stilled. "That's what it said." "Did you?" He slowly raised his head. His dark eyes met hers. "What do you care?" he asked, his voice dangerously soft. It's just the man I've seen for 5 days. He doesn't seem like the kind of man who would shoot a marshal in the back. You don't know what kind of man I am, woman," he growled. "You've seen me snowed in. You haven't seen me cornered." "And you haven't seen me?" she shot back, surprising herself. The good people of Probity Springs saw a weak widow. They didn't see the woman who would smash a window to survive. A slow, grim smile quirked one side of his mouth. "No," he said, his voice softer. "I didn't shoot him in the back. He drew on me. I was faster. He was corrupt, on the payroll of a cattle baron. But a dead marshal is a dead marshal. The law doesn't care about the why. Don't ask me questions, Christina. You won't like the answers." It was a warning, but also an admission. "Why?" she asked, pushing. "Did you stiffen when I mentioned Bart Higgins?" This time the knife clattered to the table. He stood up, looming. "Bartholomew Higgins," he spat, "is the man who made me this." He jabbed a finger at his scar. "He's the man who put my name on that poster. He's the man who took everything from me. And you walked right into his web, just like I did." Before she could respond, he grabbed his coat. "I need air." He was out the door, into the howling white. He was gone for 2 hours. Christina paced, terrified. He was out there, in that killing frost, because she had pushed him. When he finally returned, he was a statue of ice. He sat by the stove, shivering, his face a mask of old fury. Christina brought him a bowl of stew. His hands were shaking too hard to hold the spoon. She knelt and held it to his lips. He looked at her, his eyes wild, but he let her feed him. When he was done, he took the bowl. Their fingers brushed. It was the first time they had touched. He pulled his hand back as if burned. "Thank you," he mumbled, turning his face away. Later that night, Christina woke. Thomas was standing by the patched-up window, holding the small object he'd been carving. "You can't sleep?" she asked. He didn't turn. Too much noise. He turned and handed her the small wooden object. It was a bird, a small, simple wren, carved with incredible loving detail. "It's beautiful," she whispered. My mother used to like them," he said, his voice thick. "I carve them when I need to remember that there was a time before this." He was showing her his heart, not the outlaw, but the man underneath. Christina closed her hand around the small bird. He took a step closer. She could feel the heat from him. He wanted to kiss her. She saw the longing, the war in his expression, and she realized, with a terrifying jolt, that she wanted him to. He saw the realization in her eyes, and he stepped back, shaking his head. "The storm's breaking," he said, his voice suddenly gruff again. "I can see the ridge line. In the morning, you're leaving." The morning dawned with a blinding light. The storm had passed, leaving a silent, sculpted world of white. The cabin was buried to its eaves. Thomas was already outside, digging. "You said I had to leave," Christina said, her breath pluming. "And you will," he said, not looking at her. "But not today. Too deep. Another day, maybe. Then you go south, avoid the town, head for the Union Pacific line. With what? You're just casting me out? Like they did." He turned on her, his face dark. "What do you want from me, Christina? You want me to take you in? Don't you understand? I'm the one you need protection from. I am a dead man walking. Anyone seen with me is a target. I'm giving you a chance." The mention of Higgins hung in the air. "What did he do to you?" she pressed. Thomas looked at the town, his eyes filling with hatred. "He's not just a banker," he said, his voice low. "He's a thief, a murderer. 5 years ago, this was all Holt land. My land." He told her everything. His father, William Holt, had been Higgins's partner in a silver mine. The day they were to file the claim, his father had a suspicious wagon accident. When Thomas confronted Higgins, he was met with a forged will and a fake bill of sale claiming his father had sold the entire ranch to Higgins for $1 to cover gambling debts. "I told him I'd kill him. I was young and stupid," Thomas said, touching his scar. That night, 2 men came to the ranch. They were there to make sure I joined my father. They held me down, and one of them, Frank Wade, gave me this. A reminder from Mr. Higgins. They burned the house to the ground with me in it. They thought you were dead. Almost. I crawled out a cellar window. By the time I was healed, Higgins had solidified everything. He'd used the mine's profits to buy the bank. He was Probity Springs, and I was the disgruntled, violent son. He put a warrant out on me for arson. And the robbery? The marshal? A man's got to eat, Thomas said, his voice hard. I robbed his bank transfers. I was stealing my own money back. He took your home. He took your husband's dignity, and then his life. He took my land, my name, and my father. We are the same, Christina. We are both ghosts he created. The connection was terrifying. She had found the only other person who understood Higgins's precise evil. Thomas, she said, the pieces clicking. Higgins was helping him, lending him money. Higgins doesn't just take things, Christina. He ruins them first. He finds a man's weakness and he feeds it. He makes them dig their own grave. Then he pushes them in. A new sound cut the silence. A jingling harness. Thomas's head snapped up. Inside, now! He shoved her toward the cabin, grabbed his rifle, and peered through a crack in the patched window. Riders. 3 of them. Higgins's men. They're looking for me. She could hear them talking. Higgins wants Holt's head. $500, Wade. Wade. Christina looked at Thomas. His face was a mask of cold hatred. The man who gave him the scar was right outside. Stay down, Thomas whispered. Hello, the cabin, Frank Wade's voice called. We're associates of Mr. Higgins looking for a lost friend. Name of Thomas Holt. Thomas didn't move. No answer, Wade said. Let's flush him out. Burn it. Frank, we don't even know if it's him. And I don't care. If it's him, we smoke him out. If it's not, it's one less squatter. Light the torch. They were going to be burned alive. Thomas raised his rifle, ready to fight 3-1. No, Christina whispered, grabbing his arm. The wood pile. There's a back, a hole, where you store the wood. He hadn't told her about it. A small escape hatch, hidden behind the indoor wood pile. His eyes widened. She had been paying attention. They'll be at the front, she said. He nodded. Decision made. He grabbed his ammunition and a bag. Go. Go now. He started pushing the firewood aside. Thomas, no, you go. It's you they want. They're burning the cabin, Christina. We both run, or we both burn. Now move. He shoved her through the small, dark opening into a cold, snowy dugout behind the cabin. He scrambled in after her, just as they heard Wade shout, It's lit! Roast, you bastard! A terrible whoosh filled the air. The smell of burning pitch. The cabin, their shelter, was on fire. The heat was intense, even in the dugout. The cabin's back wall was a sheet of flame. Smoke billowed over them. They'll wait by the front door, Thomas whispered, his voice raspy. Wade's arrogant. So what do we do? Christina coughed. The cleft goes up, Thomas said, pointing to the rocks above them. It's steep, but the snow is deep. We crawl. The smoke will cover us. I'll go first. Stay right behind me. Don't stop. She nodded, her fear a kind of fuel. Now. Thomas lunged, low to the ground, and scrambled up the rocky cleft. Christina was right behind him. She slipped, dislodging pebbles. A shout from below. There! In the smoke! It's him! A shot rang out, smacking the rock near her head. Don't stop! Thomas roared. He was at the top, in the trees. He reached down and hauled her bodily over the ridge. Another shot. Wade and his 2 men were scrambling from the front of the cabin. Run! Thomas yelled, but he ran past her, back toward the ridge. He dropped to one knee and fired his Winchester. 1, 2, 3 shots. One of the deputies cried out and fell, clutching his leg. The other 2 dove for cover. That'll slow them down, Thomas said, grabbing her hand. This way. He pulled her into the dense forest, weaving through deep drifts. They ran until Christina's lungs were on fire. Finally, Thomas pulled her into a dense thicket of spruce. "Stay here," he panted, watching their back trail. "Did we lose them?" she finally whispered. "For now. Wade has to deal with his injured man. But they'll go back to town, get more men, and follow these tracks. We have maybe 6 hours." Christina leaned against a log, exhausted. Her shelter was gone. Thomas's entire life was a column of smoke. "It's my fault," she whispered, tears freezing on her cheeks. "I brought this. I'm sorry, Thomas." He looked at her, his face grim. "Don't. This was always coming. And if you hadn't been there, I'd be a cinder right now. I never would have thought of the wood hatch. You saved my life, Christina." "So what do we do now?" she asked. Thomas checked his rifle. "We can't run. They'll just follow the tracks. We have to do what they don't expect." "Which is? Go to Probity Springs." Christina thought he'd gone mad. "Go into the town? Thomas, that's suicide." "Exactly. They're looking for me in the hills. They'd never expect me to walk right into the spider's web. Not now." "But why?" "For the proof," Thomas said. "My father kept a private ledger, a record of every investor, every assay. I thought it burned with the ranch. But Higgins is arrogant. He wouldn't have destroyed it. He would have kept it. Like a trophy. And he wouldn't keep it in the bank. He'd keep it somewhere personal." He looked at her. "He took your house, didn't he?" "Yes. He's living there, administering the estate. He's gloating. He's sleeping in the house of the man he just destroyed. And I'd bet my life he's keeping his prize, my father's ledger, in your husband's old safe." It made a sick kind of sense. The safe was in Thomas's study. She still had the key on a ribbon around her neck. She fumbled inside her dress. The key was cold against her skin. "I have the key," she whispered. Thomas's dark eyes locked with hers. The hunt had begun. "Higgins's men are up here. The house, it'll be empty. That ledger, it's not just my justice. It's yours. It's the proof that will destroy Bart Higgins." He stood. "I can go alone. You can head south." She looked at the key. She looked at the smoke. She thought of Higgins's cold smile. She stood. "No, you don't know the house. I do. We do this together." Thomas nodded. "Once." "All right. We move at dusk. But—" He pulled his heavy Colt revolver from his belt and offered it to her. "Handle first. Higgins's house. If we get caught, you're going to need this." I don't know how. I'll show you." For the next hour, in the cold shadow of the trees, Thomas Holt taught Christina Miller how to shoot. Don't pull the trigger. Squeeze it. Slowly. Put the front sight on what you want to disappear. And squeeze. She fired it 5 times. The last shot hit the pine cone he'd pointed at. He reloaded it and handed it back. "Only use it if you have to. But if you have to, don't hesitate." She tucked the heavy pistol into the waistband of her skirt. The cold steel was a terrifying comfort. She was no longer just a widow. She was an accomplice. Dusk settled over Probity Springs. The main street was empty, save for a few horses hitched outside the Golden Nugget Saloon. Thomas and Christina watched from a dark alley. "All right," Thomas whispered. "Your house, my old house, is at the end of the street. Who's there?" "Higgins," Christina replied, "and his cook, Mrs. Danes. But she leaves at 7. Every night." "And the door?" "The cellar door, around the back. The lock was always rusted. I used to kick it open." "Good." Thomas peered around the corner. "Higgins's horse is at the saloon. He's waiting for Wade. We wait for the cook." They waited in the freezing alley. At 2 minutes past 7, the back door of the house opened. Mrs. Danes walked out, heading down the street. "Now," Thomas said. They moved through the shadows to the back porch. The slanted cellar door was just as she remembered. Thomas put his boot to it. The rusted lock groaned and popped. "Go," he said. "I'm right behind you." Christina slipped into the darkness. The cellar smelled of damp earth and coal. She led him up the rickety stairs to the kitchen. It was warm, lit by a single lantern. The house was quiet. "His study," she whispered, "is at the front." They crept through the house she had once called home. It felt like a violation. They reached the study. The door was ajar. And there it was, the heavy, iron safe tucked behind Thomas's desk. "You, the safe," Thomas ordered, moving to the window to watch the street. "I'll watch." Christina's hands shook as she knelt and put the key in the lock. A heavy clunk. The door swung open. It was full of papers and a large, leather-bound book. "Thomas," she breathed. He was by her side, taking the book. He opened it. His father's elegant handwriting filled the page. "Assay, 14 Oz, gold per ton." Thomas's voice was thick. "Higgins's official report said 2 ounces. He stole 90% of it." He flipped the pages. "Investor, B. Higgins. Loan from T. Miller. Repayment. Forgiven." What does that mean? It means he didn't lend Thomas money. Thomas growled. He was taking money from Thomas. Thomas was in on it, a silent partner, laundering the stolen profits. And when Thomas got too weak or too scared, Higgins forgave the loan by killing him and taking everything. Christina felt sick. Her husband wasn't just weak. He was a criminal. He used me," she whispered. "He used our marriage as a cover." "They were all in on it," Thomas said, slamming the ledger shut. "And this proves it. This hangs him. Mr. Holt, Christina?" The voice came from the hallway. Thomas spun, pushing Christina behind him, his rifle up. Standing in the doorway was Mildred, the woman who had looked away. "Mildred," Christina breathed. What are you doing here?" I saw the light," Mildred stammered, her eyes wide, darting from Christina to Thomas's scarred face. I thought Mr. Higgins had come home." "Oh, Christina, you're alive, and you're with him." "Mildred, listen to me," Christina said, stepping forward. "It's not what you think. Higgins, he's a monster. He banished me. He killed Thomas's father." I don't understand. "We have proof, Mildred. Proof that will free this town. You have to walk away. Please. For our friendship. Please." Mildred looked at the open safe, at the ledger, at Christina. He banished you," she whispered. "And he told my husband he'd foreclose on our farm if we didn't meet the new note. He's a devil." Relief washed over Christina. Yes, Mildred. "So you see, you have to let us go." Mildred nodded, tears in her eyes. "Yes, of course. Go now. I never saw anything." She turned and fled, her footsteps pattering down the hall. They heard the back door slam. Thomas looked at Christina. "I don't like it." "She's scared," Christina said. "She's on our side." "Fear makes people do stupid things," Thomas said, shoving the ledger into his bag. "We're leaving. Now. The back door." They ran through the kitchen. Thomas unbarred the back door and pushed it open. The backyard was not empty. It was filled with men. Frank Wade stood on the back porch, a shotgun in his hands, a cruel smile on his face. Behind him stood 4 other men, all armed, and standing next to Wade, clutching her shawl, was Mildred. "I'm sorry, Christina," Mildred wept. He promised. He promised he'd forgive our note. He said you were a criminal now." The betrayal was so swift, so absolute, it stole Christina's breath. Mildred hadn't gone home. She had run straight to the saloon. "Well, well, well," Frank Wade drawled. "Look what the cat dragged in. The ghost and his girlfriend." From behind Wade, Bart Higgins himself stepped out. "Thomas," he said, his voice smooth as silk, "it has been a long time. I see Frank's parting gift. Healed up ugly." "Higgins," Thomas spat. "They were trapped. And Christina, my dear," Higgins said, "I am so disappointed. To survive the blizzard, only to fall in with this refuse, and to break into my home." "It's my home," Christina screamed. "It's my ledger," Thomas added. Higgins's smile widened. "Ah, yes, the book. Thank you for retrieving it for me. Frank, be a dear and take it from him." Wade leveled his shotgun. "Drop the bag, Holt, and the rifle, or the girl dies first." Thomas looked at the men, at Christina. He was calculating. Trapped. Slowly, his eyes never leaving Higgins, Thomas lowered his rifle. He let the bag with all their hope, fall to the snow. "Good boy," Higgins said, stepping down from the porch. "You see, Christina, the world is not about good and evil. It is about power. I have it. You do not." He nodded to Wade. "Take them to the old livery. I'll be along shortly. We need to discuss their public execution." He had planned it all. Wade motioned with the shotgun. "Move." Trapped, disarmed, and betrayed, they were marched into the darkness. The old livery stable smelled of mold and decay. Wade shoved Thomas and Christina inside, into the cavernous, dark space. "Tie them up," he ordered. They were bound back to back, tethered to a central support pillar. "Mr. Higgins will be along shortly," Wade sneered. "He wants to reminisce with you, Holt, before the fire." "Fire?" Christina whispered. "Oh, yeah," one of the men laughed. "A real tragic accident. Outlaw and his whore burned to death. Sad, really. They were going to be burned alive." Wade and his men took up positions by the main door, smoking. "Thomas," Christina whispered, her back pressed against his. "I'm thinking," he whispered back. He planned it all. "My banishment." "He didn't care if you died," Thomas replied. "He just needed you gone. You surviving was a problem. You finding me, that was a disaster for him." "Thomas, I'm scared." "I know. My knife. It's still in my boot." "Can you?" "No, it's on my right boot. I can't reach it." "Listen to me," Thomas said, his voice urgent. "When he gets here, he's going to talk. Higgins loves to gloat. He'll get close. When he does, I need you to create a diversion. Scream, fall, anything. I just need a second. A second for what? Trust me, Christina, I'm not dying here." The livery doors groaned open. Bartholomew Higgins stepped in, holding a lantern and the ledger. The light cast long, monstrous shadows. "Frank, you and the boys. Wait outside," Higgins commanded. "I want a private word." "But boss!" "Outside," Higgins snapped. "He's tied. What are they going to do? Go, and make sure the kerosene is ready." Wade and his men left, pulling the heavy doors almost shut. They were alone. Higgins set the lantern on a broken barrel, his face illuminated from below. He looked truly pleased. "The two of you," he said, tapping the ledger. "My two greatest problems, all wrapped up." You killed Thomas," Christina spat. Higgins laughed. "My dear, I did no such thing. Thomas was weak. He was stealing from me to pay gambling debts. He got sloppy. I offered him a way out, a simple suicide. In exchange, I wouldn't tell his pretty wife what a pathetic criminal he was. It was very noble of me." "And my father?" Thomas growled. "Ah, William," Higgins sighed. "A brilliant man, a terrible businessman. He wanted to share the profits, with the town. He thought our mine was a gift. He sneered. I, on the other hand, knew it was a gift to me. He wouldn't listen to reason. The wagon, that was Frank. Frank is very creative. And me? Thomas said, his voice shaking with rage. The fire, the scar. You, Higgins said, stepping closer. You were just tidying up. Stubborn, righteous, and stupid. I thought Frank had finished you. Imagine my surprise when Thomas Holt, the outlaw, started robbing my stages. It was inconvenient, but in the end, useful. He stepped right in front of them, his face inches from Thomas's. It's over, Thomas, Higgins whispered. I win. I have the mine. I have the bank. I have the town, and I will have the pleasure of watching you burn. This was it. Now, Thomas roared. Christina screamed and threw her entire body sideways, collapsing to the floor. The movement yanked Thomas hard, pulling him out of Higgins's reach. Higgins stumbled back. What? It was all Thomas needed. He wasn't trying to get the knife. He had the knife. In the alley, he had slipped the blade from his boot and wedged it, point up, in the back of his belt. His tied hands had been methodically sawing at the rope the entire time. As Christina pulled him sideways, the rope snapped. Thomas exploded into motion. He surged up, his hands free. He didn't go for Higgins. He grabbed the lantern. Higgins's eyes went wide. Wade! Wade! Thomas hurled the lantern at a pile of dry hay in the nearest stall. The oil lantern shattered. The hay erupted in a whoomph of flame. The livery doors burst open. Frank Wade and his men ran in, guns drawn. He's loose! Shoot him! Higgins shrieked. Thomas didn't have his rifle. He only had the knife. Wade raised his shotgun. Thomas ran toward the fire, vaulting into the burning stall and into the one behind it. He's burning himself alive! A deputy yelled. Spread out! Find him! Wade commanded, coughing in the thick smoke. The old dry wood was catching fast. Christina was on the ground, tied to the pillar, choking. The fire was rolling across the ceiling. She was going to die. A hand grabbed her. It was Thomas. He had circled the barn in the smoke. He sliced her ropes with one swipe. The floor! He yelled, grabbing her. There's a storm cellar, where the floorboards are rotted. He knew this building. He kicked the rotted section open, revealing a black square. Go, get in. It comes out in the alley. Run, Christina, run, and don't look back. Thomas, no. Come with me. She wept. He looked at her, his face streaked with soot. Holt, over here. Wade had spotted them. Thomas shoved her. There's no time. He has the ledger. I'm not leaving without it. Thomas! Wade! Thomas roared, turning away from Christina and charging back into the smoke. You wanted me? Come and get me! He was creating a diversion, drawing them away. No, she whispered. She dropped into the dark cellar and crawled on her hands and knees. Behind her, she heard a shotgun blast. She heard Thomas cry out in pain. She heard a man scream. She heard the roar of the fire. She burst out into the alleyway, gasping, sobbing, and did the one thing he had told her to do. She ran. Thomas took the full force of the shotgun blast in his left shoulder. It felt less like bullets, and more like a red-hot iron pole had been slammed through his body, spinning him around with sickening force. He crashed into a thick support beam, the wood biting into his back. Pain, white-hot and absolute, flared from his shoulder, stealing his breath and shattering his hearing. His arm was gone. Not just useless, but a dead, burning weight. He dropped the knife, the clatter lost in the inferno. Through the roaring, swirling curtain of black smoke, he saw Frank Wade, a dark silhouette against the advancing flames. Wade was already breaking open his shotgun, ejecting the spent shells, his movements calm and practiced. A look of grim, personal triumph was etched on his face. "Got you, Holt," Wade spat, his voice cutting through the noise. "You're a tough bastard, I'll give you that. Frank, the ledger!" The voice was a high-pitched shriek. Both men turned. Bartholomew Higgins was near the main entrance, but a massive, burning crossbeam had crashed down from the loft, blocking his path to the outside. He was trapped on the inside with them, the fire walling him in. He held the precious ledger clutched to his chest, his fine coat smoking, his silver mustache wild and smeared with soot. His civilized mask was gone, replaced by the raw, bug-eyed terror of a cornered rat. "He's loose, Frank. Forget him. Get the book. Get me out of here," Higgins shrieked, clawing at the burning beam with his free hand and recoiling with a scream of pain. Wade calmly slotted 2 new shells into the shotgun and snapped it shut. He looked at his trapped, pleading boss. He looked at the wall of fire that now separated them. He looked at the bleeding, cornered Thomas. And he smiled. He made his choice. "To hell with the book," Wade said, his voice low and filled with a hatred that was 5 years in the making. He started to raise the shotgun, his eyes fixed on Thomas. "I just want you." For Wade, this was never about the money or the ledger. It was about finishing the job he'd started at the Holt Ranch. It was about the scar. But Thomas was a creature of these hills, of these buildings. He knew this barn. He'd hidden in its lofts as a boy. He knew its tools. As Wade brought the barrel up, Thomas lunged with his good right arm, his body screaming in protest. He wasn't lunging for Wade, but for the wall beside him, where an old, long-tined pitchfork had been leaning for a decade. He grabbed the smooth wooden handle and, in one fluid, desperate motion, pivoted and drove it forward with all his remaining strength. Wade was too slow, his overconfidence his undoing. He was focused on the kill, not the last, dying twitch of his prey. The 3 iron tines of the pitchfork hit him square in the chest with a sickening wet thud. Wade's eyes went wide. He looked down, his expression one of pure, idiotic confusion. He pulled the trigger of the shotgun, but his body was already slumping. The blast went harmlessly into the ceiling, bringing down a cascade of burning hay. He gurgled, a red foam appearing at his lips, and fell, dead before he hit the dirt floor. Thomas sagged against the wall, his vision tunneling. The barn was now a vortex of fire. The heat was a physical weight, scorching his lungs. The entire roof structure was groaning, the roar of the flames punctuated by the sharp crack of snapping timbers. It was coming down, all of it. "Holt!" Higgins's voice was barely a croak. He had dropped the ledger and was on his knees, pinned by a smaller piece of burning debris. He was firing a small, pearl-handled pistol uselessly at the wall of flames that had become his cage. "Holt, help me!" he sobbed, seeing Thomas through the smoke. I'll give you anything. The mine. The bank. It's all yours. I'll sign it over. I'll tell them. Just get me out of here." Thomas looked at the man who had destroyed his life. The man who had murdered his father, stolen his name, scarred his face, and just tried to burn the only person he had ever loved alive. The man who, even now, believed that the mine and the bank were things of value. Thomas started to walk toward him, a slow, agonizing limp. His good right hand fumbled, not for a weapon, but deep into his coat pocket. Yes, that's it," Higgins cried, hope surging in his voice. He tried to push the beam off his leg, his eyes fixed on his savior. "Help me! We can get out! We can—" Thomas stopped just out of Higgins's reach, on the other side of a low-burning wagon tongue. The heat was peeling the skin from his face. He looked at the pathetic, weeping banker. "You're right about one thing, Higgins," Thomas rasped, his voice thick with smoke and pain. "It's not about good and evil. It's about power. Yes, power I can give you." Thomas slowly pulled his hand from his pocket. He wasn't holding a weapon. He was holding the small, smooth, carved wooden wren. He looked at it for a long second, his thumb brushing over the delicate wings. He thought of his mother. He thought of Christina. Then he looked back at Higgins, his dark eyes, clear and calm amid the fiery chaos. You have nothing I want," Thomas said. He turned his back on the screaming, pleading, cursing banker, and began to walk toward the main doors, the ones Wade and his men had used. "Halt, you can't! You can't leave me, you bastard! You're no better than me! Halt!" Thomas ignored him. He was bleeding badly. Every step was a fresh wave of agony. The fire was roaring at his back, a living thing, a dragon's breath. He had to get to Christina. He had to know she was safe. He reached the great doors, pushed them open with his good shoulder, and stumbled out into the shocking, clean, cold night air. He collapsed onto the street, his face hitting the snow, the cold a merciful shock against his burning skin. He heard a sound like thunder, a great, final whoosh as the entire roof of the livery caved in, sending a massive column of sparks and fire 100 feet into the air. Bartholomew Higgins and the ledger that proved Thomas's innocence were gone. Thomas was on the ground, his blood a dark, steaming stain on the white snow. He heard people shouting. The whole town was awake, running toward the fire, their faces pale and horrified in the flickering light. He tried to stand. He couldn't. His vision was closing in. He had lost too much blood. "Thomas!" A voice. Her voice. It cut through the pain, through the roaring in his ears. He looked up, forcing his head from the snow. She was running toward him, her face a mask of unbelievable terror and relief. She hadn't run. She had waited in the alley, hidden, listening, praying. You idiot," he rasped, a bloody smile touching his lips as she fell to her knees beside him. "I told you to run." "I couldn't," she cried, her voice breaking. She saw his shoulder, the shredded, bloody mess of his coat and flesh, and she tore a strip from the bottom of her own dress, pressing it hard against the wound. "Oh, God." "Thomas, no. No. It's done," he whispered, his eyes struggling to focus on her. "He's gone. The ledger. It's gone with him. But he's gone. We need a doctor," she screamed at the gathering crowd, at the silent, staring faces of the people of Probity Springs. "Somebody help him. He's the one who... He saved us. He stopped Higgins." The crowd just stared. They saw the most wanted outlaw in the territory, bleeding to death. They saw the town's biggest fire. They were frozen, confused, unable to reconcile the monster from the posters with the man dying at their feet. "Christina," Thomas said, his voice weaker. He grabbed her hand with his good one. His grip was failing. "I'm here, Thomas. I'm here. I'm not leaving. I'm not good at words," he stammered, a cough bringing a fresh fleck of blood to his lips. He was fighting for every breath. "But I need you to live. You hear me? You live. Free. Don't let them win." "I won't," she sobbed, holding his hand to her cheek, her tears falling onto his face. "I won't. Just stay with me. Please. Thomas, stay with me." He looked at her. His dark eyes, the ones that had been so full of fury and shadow, were now clear and soft. He saw her. The woman who had smashed his window. The woman who had fed him when he was frozen. The woman who had seen the man behind the scar. He pulled his hand free, a last, agonizing effort. He fumbled at his pocket, the one he'd reached for in the barn. He pressed the small, carved wooden bird into her palm. For your heart," he whispered, his fingers closing hers around it. It's free now. Live. His hand went slack. His eyes, fixed on her face, lost their focus. His last breath was a quiet sigh, a release. "Thomas," she whispered, her voice small. "Thomas, no. No, please. Thomas." But he was gone. She stared at his still face, at the peace that had finally settled over his scarred features. The silence was absolute. The fire crackled. The town watched. She clutched the small wooden bird, her knuckles white, and she threw her head back and screamed, a sound of such profound, animal grief that it silenced the entire town, silencing even the crackle of the dying fire. Christina left Probity Springs the next day, the small wooden bird clutched in her hand. She was free, but that freedom had been bought with the blood of a man the world called an outlaw. Thomas Holt died a criminal, but Christina knew the truth. He was the only man of honor she had ever met. He didn't just die for her. He died so she could live. The town found justice, but Christina found a tragic, unbreakable truth about the cost of love. What did you think of Christina's and Thomas's story? How often do we misjudge the people society has cast aside? Let us know in the comments what you think about Thomas's final sacrifice. If this story touched your heart, please like this video and share it with someone who appreciates a story of true honor and hidden love. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more real-life dramas just like this. We have a new story waiting for you next week.